Hey guys, welcome back to Trekyards. I am the timeless Captain Foley.
And I'm about to crash. Commander Cockins.
We have a guest with us today. We have the always awesome Rob Bonchune joining us today to tell us some of his excellent stories. This one is specific to a specific Voyager episode, however, as you might have guessed from my intro. It's the Voyager episode Timeless.
Yes.
Which, Samuel, season
5, episode 6. And for those who don't remember, although this one should stand out to you for multiple reasons, this is the one where Harry Kim, in the future, and Chakotay come back to the Delta Quadrant to save the Voyager crew who died a long time ago in a crash, a big ice crash. And this is which is awesome. This is quite a fun episode, and we know that Garrett Wang's his favourite episode because he got everything to do. And visually speaking, also a very impressive episode. So, Rob, talk us through this episode, and you sort of picked this one for us to talk about because it's special to you. So, why Timeless? Go for it. Tell us the story.
Well, for me, it's special because it was the first episode I was asked to supervise on. Like my first role as the CG supervisor, as opposed to just one of the animators. And they picked that show because at the time, the whole snow crash sequence was going to be done by another facility because they felt that we were too busy working on other Star Trek episodes. So they thought, hey, well, let's start Rob off with something simple. So me and a couple of guys will do all the space shots, which were relatively straightforward, and there's no big worries about that, and certainly to test the waters with me, they thought, well, let's do it that way. And so everything was fine, everything's moving along, and we're ahead of the game, so there was no particular rush or panic or anything like
Although
that.
Although special, because you got to use a Galaxy class, which is pretty damn rare for Voyager.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's true. Yes, that was fun. Yes, I forgot about that. Sorry, it's just a little Wayback on the Wayback Machine there.
Yes. Yeah, the USS Challenger, commanded by Joy LaForge, Captain LaForge, who directed the episode, which is a brilliant little internal
Oh, that's
thing.
right, he did. That's right. The fact that we had to use Galaxy class, I thought was pretty cool. Within that, even within forget the crash sequence, and then one day, Mitch comes in and calls me, Mojo and I, the other supervisor, to have a look at a tape of this other facility's work on their digital station of snow. So we look at it, and they have like a mock Voyager, like sliding out on this landscape of digital snow. I mean, it didn't look like a final shot or whatever, but it certainly looked promising. So Mojo and I remember we look at each other and we look at them and we say to Mitch, we go, well, it looks certainly like it's on its way, or like it's almost there. That's obviously, it doesn't look real yet, but a few little changes here and there. And then Mitch goes, yeah, but the problem is that they gave that to us, and we said, so you're going to finish it. And they were like, this is the best we can do. We don't know what else to do. So then we were like, oh, okay. Well, that's a problem then. And Mitch was like, well, now we only have like a week and a half before the episode airs. Do you think you could do this whole crash sequence and come up with something like looking real in a week and a half? And I was just like, oh, are you sure? I think I broke out into a cold sweat at that point because it was just like, I have no idea how we're going to do this. I mean, I know that particle system and light wave was not good at the time. There's no way we're going to make snow digitally. We're going to have to come up with something else. So right away, Mitch had to go or whatever. Went right upstairs to Ron Thornton, and I was just like, Ron, he's the guru. Tell us what we can do to get this done. And Ron he loved it. He just jumped right into gear, and he was like, oh, I'm going to film against green screens, and we're going to use baking soda, and we're going to do all these elements, and then we're going to comp them in, and and it was just like, oh, thank God, and it was a smaller staff at that time, and pretty much everyone jumped in, like even though there was a smaller Star Trek team and the other teams were working on different shows, the other personnel were working on different shows, all the supervisors kind of jumped in. John Allardyce, Emil Smith, like a whole bunch of people just like, so it was like everyone was doing, like, it was like, while they're filming the elements in the background, I'm blocking out the shots, and they had a Q working on the explosion of the warp engine. You know, he was rebuilding all the insides of the warp engine. So instead of like, it wasn't linear anymore. It was all like, you know, it was all like parallel processing at that point. Instead of a sort of a linear show, it just turned into a, you know, everything going at once, which is the first time I had ever been put in that kind of a circumstance where I had to like watch over every little thing. And because ultimately I was responsible, even though I know Ron Thornton, the owner, was working on it, it kind of didn't matter because at that point, he's still really doing it for me, you know, like for to say, you know, to work on the episode I'm supervising. So I knew that ultimately, you know, if it didn't work, it's not Ron Thornton that's going to get blamed. It would be me.
It is worth mentioning there as well that one of the hardest things, and even more so back then, the prospect of doing a planetscape is a whole different ballgame to doing a spacescape. In a spacescape, that you have the background of stars. Okay, you put a planet in, a nebula, it's all abstract, and the ship is consistent in its own way. A planetscape, suddenly, especially in the sense of photoreal, which obviously in those days was slightly different, what you'd accept as photoreal, you then got to do, you know, high-res textures for you've got to exist, the ground's got to exist. The thing that stops the horizon from being visible, because it's all a 3D digital space, you've got to have layers, you've got to have a good-looking sky, it's all got to exist and work together. There'll be depth, the texturing's got to be higher than most ships need to be, because again, you're looking at right up close, especially in the sequence that we see, everything is pretty much right into the camera. That's a level that normally is something of the high end anyway, and to get looking as good as you did, I just want to break in there that a space shot is straightforward. Just getting any planetscape is always tricky, and that was done so expertly, even ignoring the snow stuff, the actual particle stuff. It was very, very well done just on that. So
you said exactly everything that we did that I suddenly couldn't remember, but the way you said it is exactly right. And John Teska he was painting all the bump maps and all the displacement meshes for the mountains. But considering that it was all done in less than 2 weeks from nothing to what you saw on TV, and at that time there were movies that looked worse there were films that were out where guys had 6 months to do the effects and they didn't look as good as what we did in a week and a half. Not to toot my own horn there, but it's not my horn anyway. It's like it's everybody's horn. Foundations, we did, you know, the whole team, everyone really like sleepless, like, you know, nobody slept much during that time. I mean, there was just so much to do, and the processor speeds back then were so much slower. It took so much longer to get renders out, and we didn't have the kind of compositing stuff. Like now, it would be much simpler with compositing. You know, I'd pull out After Effects, be able to layer in everything. But back then, all the snow elements that as the ship was like, you know, scooting along, you see all this snow thrown out. These are all elements on these transparent polygons. There are like multiple transparent like planes, like, you know, like one over the other. And when when the software has to calculate all that, it's like every transparency, you know what I mean? It's just like the render time and ups the render time and just keeps upping the render time. So it took a long time to even like see, oh, it's working. Oh, it's not working, you know? And like, how do we got to move that plane over. Oh, this element's got to go over here. And like, you got to offset all the sequences that are on each one of those planes. Thank God Ron really knew his, you know, Ron coming from the background of like, you know, Jerry Anderson and all that back in England. I mean, he really understood the miniature stuff. So for him, it was like, he was downstairs, you know, he had the green screen up, he had the baking soda, and he made this form of the Voyager, and he pulls it through, and you have, you know, all the baking soda flying off, and it looks like snow, you know, and then those were put through cool. We did have a compositing department, but back then it was different. She had a dedicated machine. It wasn't like now we can have After Effects on the laptop, you know, like, well, that would have made that show so much easier, but back then it was not possible.
This is one of my favorite scenes in all of Voyager, and probably it's up there with all of Trek. Like, I think it's one that's really memorable for people, and it's such a fantastic scene. So how does it feel to be a part of, like, not only that was your first supervisor gig, but like, as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the most memorable shots of Trek, because you never see a ship like crash landing on a planet like that. It's just, as a fan, I mean, what are the chances, you know, when you really think about it? And I got to work on that, and then to be able to, you know, to actually supervise and work on something like that was just freaky weird. Anyway, I mean, just unbelievable.
And in all fairness, that's, one of the 5-6 hero ships, and if you think about how many people have been involved in crashing the hero ship of a show, the TOS Colony never crashed. The NXO-1 I don't think ever did. This one obviously crashed twice. Once into the Krenim time ship and one in this, and Generations and the Ian to Nemesis into the Scimitar. Apart from that, I think you're one of the, and if you go up to supervisor of those shots, you're one like 3 people that crashed the hero ship of the show. You helped destroy the thing that gave them money. Voyager gave you a home and you blew it up. So I guess if we get some time sense, you had a week and a half to 2 weeks. At what point to the release date, hour, minute, was this shot? At what point did you know this is going to come out correct? And at what point was it done? Or was it not necessarily done, but you delivered it as best you could?
It was more like, well, actually, I kind of feel that way almost about everything. It was more like I delivered it as best we could. Did I think it was done? No. How could the maps have been better on the planet? Absolutely. But you're just limited by. Actually, Mitch had to come in and say, "Rob, it's done," right up to like the last day. Like usually we deliver like a week before that day, but to have a buffer. But we went right up to like the last day. Like the last shot was delivered and uploaded. Network or whatever on the East Coast for them to air it because it airs first there.
Wow, that's crazy.
Within 5 hours of airing, the last shot was delivered. Once certain elements were completed and we were doing, and I did like test comps, little sequence, even if it wasn't perfect, but we just wanted to see. So we'd skimp on rendering ultra realistic or whatever. When I saw the first half-assed passes, if you will, with what we had, and it was looking okay, I was like, at least I knew that this was the way to do it. At that point, I was like, okay, so we have picked the right direction. It was right to, because, I didn't mention at one point with Ron Thornton, we were sitting there and we're going, now, which is going to be better? Should we concentrate? We only have like a week and a half or whatever, 2 weeks. Do we go the route that the other vendor did, in the sense that, did we try to solve the snow problem digitally? Or did we just say, screw it and go with practical elements and then blend them in? We made a decision to go for practical because I said that it's such an unknown, especially at that time with lightweight particle systems and all that. A sketchy part of the software, if you will, known to crash a lot at that time. And knowing what Ron could do with practical stuff, I was like, no. Because at first, at the very first, we wish we could have, maybe come up with a digital solution and pulled it off. But in the time allotted, if we would have had more time, I think we would have maybe tried. Getting real elements in there made all the difference.
So this episode was actually nominated for an Emmy Award. How did that make you feel? That must have been... I see some behind you, so you've obviously got some, but how did it make you feel for this one? Did it win the Emmy Award?
No, it did not. How did it make me feel? That was all surreal to me, because it never even entered my psyche, like, oh, this show could get nominated for an Emmy. Like, oh, I could get an Emmy Award for it. Like, I just did not think about things like that. I did not think about it. Mm-hmm. And so they said, hey, it's going to get nominated. And not only that, so is in that year, like two episodes of Star Trek were nominated. That it didn't win was okay, because I was nominated also on the other episode that did win. However, I was a little bit bummed because that sequence that we did was for TV, like it was out of the ordinary. But the reason why it didn't win, as we were told, is that was a great sequence, but the rest of the episode, like when they put together the reels, the problem was that although that was really strong, the reel for the show wasn't much other than that. Whereas the other episode that had that camera name of that had all the Borg in it, and it was the first time the Borg super complex and all that stuff, which won, and because we had the detaching head, and that's what won for, because the ensemble was better. Mm-hmm. Thanks for having me on, guys. Thanks for asking the questions, and until next time, everybody.
That's right. So thank you for joining us. As always, it's always a pleasure to hear from you. So looking forward to more chats with you in the future, because you got some great stories about specific episodes and scenes, which is absolutely awesome. So Anyway, guys, if you like this video, if you like this information, by all means, click the like button. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification icon, visit us on social media, blah, 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 if I can speak. And yeah, there's lots of links down below that can help us out and help you out. And Samuel's going to tell you a little bit about those right now.
Like Patreon, like Trekyards.com, like our Super Chats, like our Everpress, like our Eagle Moss. All those things support the channel financially, and some of them you save money by doing. Mostly the Eagle Moss. But if you like ships like the Voyager, for example, go to Eagle Moss, buy a Eagle Moss ship, put in the code, save some money, and you can crash it yourself in real snow. Yeah, fly to Stuart when it's snowing and just throw 8 Voyagers at the snow, and eventually you'll get a good shot. With an Emmy. There you go.
And on that note, again, thank you for joining us, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
And thank you, guys. Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Sam.
Until next time, I am Captain Foley.
I'm Connor Coggins.
And I'm a guest.
Well, you're Rob Bonchune. You're an awesome guest. We'll see you soon, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.